reduce the amount of time I spend reading this long page for an introduction to Raymont, Reverend Raymont Anderson. What I'm impressed with is that he is a martial arts teacher. And my son is really into martial arts, and I did wrestling in high school. And I wish I took martial arts, because what they teach you is the best way to approach a competition is to come from inside and not be so aggressive. So I miss that part in myself. And maybe Raymont will teach me one day. He is a teacher, a mentor, a speaker, minister, and more. He's been ordained independent New Thought minister, ordained interfaith interspiritual minister, and a spiritual director and spiritual counseling as a licensed practitioner. I know he recently became a practitioner for Center for Spiritual Living as well. And he's continuing to grow. And if he wants to say anything else about himself, I'm going to let him do that. He's got great energy. We always appreciate having him coming here. So get ready for a fascinating, powerful talk. And if you let me down, it's all on you. Thank you, Reverend Raymont.
My pleasure. Well, good morning, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
How are we today? I don't know that I could do low energy if I tried to do. Because I actually did that one time and it didn't work very well. So how is everyone this morning?
Good.
So, I don't know if you get a mention of what the talk title is prior, but today's talk title was sort of a Shakespearean throwback. To be or not to be? That is not the question. See, I tweaked it a little bit. To be or not to be is not the question. So the question potentially could be, what do you expect then? Right? And I'm saying this because to be or not to be is not the question, because you have no choice but to be. We don't get a choice. Because if God is all there is, then we can't choose to not be what we are. Now, we can choose to deny it. We can choose to ignore it. We can choose to it. But we cannot not be it. So, what do we expect then? If we can't not be it. And what we tend to do is focus so much on what we are doing, because see, what we're doing we can identify. See, I can look at you right now and I can see who's sitting. I can see who's leaning. I can see who has a leg up. I can see what we're doing. But can we identify what we're being? Now, sometimes we can identify certain things when we'll say things like, Joshua's being so rude to Mary Ann this morning. We might be able to identify, that's a lie by the way, but we may be able to identify, able to identify certain things like that. But is he being that, or is what he's saying or demonstrating versus what he's being? So when I said that the question may actually be, what are we expecting? If I were to ask, and I'm not, but if I were to ask, though I might be, but if I were to ask, how many of you went to bed last night? That's not the question. How many of you went to bed last night and put forth the intention of waking up who you are today? Meaning, I went to bed last night and before I dozed off said, tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be Ray. I'm going to be a 5 foot tall, 5'10" African-American man with tattoos. My name is Ray. And did I set the intention to do that?
Yes.
No. Because it's who I already am. It's what I already am. And I woke up this morning and I didn't have to go check my driver's license to see if my name had changed. I didn't have to look in the mirror to see if somehow I had changed genders. I didn't have to do any of that because I woke up with the full expectation that what I went to bed as is what I woke up as. But do we do the same thing when it comes to being the absolute? Because we do a lot of things in search of being it, in search of embodying it. We pray to be closer to embody that which God is. We meditate to bring stillness to our minds and our hearts, that we may receive the full expression of all that. We do all these spiritual practicey things in order to somehow feel closer to what we already are. That's why in religious science, we always say as practitioners that nothing needs to be healed, only truth to be revealed. That's the only thing. We are revealing the truth. So this whole thing with the absolute, being the divine God, all that is, it's almost like last night I went to bed and I dropped something under the thing and I bent down to pick it up. Ow! And ow. Oh, who am I? Oh, I don't remember who I am. So I go to a doctor, practitioner, doctor, physician, to help me reconnect with what's already in there, but I've forgotten. But just because I have amnesia doesn't mean I don't, it changes who I am. I bump my head, I forget who I am, I wake up, and now all of a sudden I am a dog? No, I may think I am, but it's not the truth of what I am. So the practitioner, the minister, the physician, the whomever is helping me to remember what already is. So the question is, what are we doing within and as ourselves to reconnect, to recollect or recollect, to remember, rejoin with what we already are as the absolute? How do we anchor ourselves into this awareness that there is nothing that needs to, ultimately, there is nothing that needs to be gained, and ultimately nothing technically that needs to be released or changed other than our misperception of who and what we are? Because see, the thing is, Ernest Holmes says, I'll give you this little piece first. What is the absolute? By definition, it is the unconditioned, that which nothing can limit, that which forever transcends any conceivable limitation or determination. Unconditioned perfection, self-existent, self-sufficient, often used as a synonym for God. Truth is absolute and remains unaffected by the opinions, the desires, or the beliefs of man. So this is what we are. In essence, we are self-existent, self-sufficient. We are unconditioned perfection. So then the question turns into, when we know what we are being, it has no choice but to then change what we are doing. So I may have used this analogy before, so if I have, please forgive. Someone who is a skilled dancer moves in and out of life as a dancer, even when not dancing. Meaning, you can go to Whole Foods, see someone who has studied ballet for 15, 20 years or whatever, bend over to pick up a bottle of Crisco, and it looks like it looks like just something in their movements. They're reaching for a coffee at Starbucks, and something says, they're sort of like graceful. The average person isn't that graceful. Someone, I would venture to say, correct me if I'm wrong, I would venture to say someone who has studied music this amount of time gets to this point where they are simply music. Meaning, automatically, it's just like music is being downloaded. I hear someone on the train and they're doing something and this rhythm immediately pops in and boom, there's a song. I hear someone walking through the hall and the manner in which they are walking. That's a rhythm for a beat for, that's a song. There's no conscious thought that says, today when I go into Starbucks, I'm going to look for, it just happens. One of the things Doug said when he introduced me was that I practice martial arts. And when he said this, for some reason, I don't know why this scene popped into my mind. There's a scene in the new Karate Kid, which interestingly enough, they're not doing karate, they're actually doing kung fu. But and young Will Smith, Jaden, but young Will Smith, they look exactly alike. He's very frustrated with the whole, put on the jacket, take off the jacket. I'm tired of this. And Jackie Chan's character's like, look, and he's punching, and like all this stuff happening. He's like, and Jackie Chan looks at him and says, understand this, Kung Fu is everywhere. It's in everything. And the reason being because in China, Kung Fu, see, we think Kung Fu means, the blocks and the strikes and the kicks. We envision that as Kung Fu. But Kung Fu really means, technically, disciplined work. Joshua is a Kung Fu master because of how he addresses this thing called music. Practitioners are Kung Fu masters of prayer. Where and how is spiritual Kung Fu showing up in our lives where we are demonstrating this perfection that we are? Because see, once again, when you know your skill and craft, you can't not be it. You can't not be. Those who are moms, you can try all you want to not be motherly. But when you see someone else's child doing something that hits that heart chord, you're like the mom in you. Hey, young man, please don't do that. Please don't. Thank you. Where's your mother? Let me know. Because you can't just, you're not my child. I don't care what you do. Now, legally or whatever, we may throw up that thing, but it's still in there. Because you can't not be it. You can't not be perfect. You can't not be the absolute. So when you realize this and when we step forward and we say, okay, so if I'm going to step into this beingness, what does that mean? What does that look like? Because if I say, Norm, and I'm not asking, just hypothetically throwing this out there, what does it mean to be a musician? What does it mean to be a musician? Beyond the doing part of it. Take all of that off, because ultimately, even if, I would venture to say, even if you never touched another guitar, you are still a musician. Now you can answer, correct?
True. I've tried to walk away from it, and
you can't
I couldn't.
not be what you are. Somewhere in you, it is the essence of. So how do we then choose to step forward and say, it's what I am? And how do we respond in life to things from this place of being the I am? Not too long ago, I was having a conversation with folks, and we do all this talk about revealing the Christ consciousness, or revealing the Christ, or being the Christ, or showing the I am, and whatever we call, whatever we say. Because sometimes because sometimes we get in our spiritual place of platitudes, And we will quote things, that which you resist, persist. Like we throw out these things, and if you really ask, because sometimes I do, we really ask someone, when you say this, what do you really mean? Well, I think it means, so recently I got into this conversation where I asked someone, so for you, to you, what does it mean to reveal the Christ consciousness, the Buddha nature, the whatever it is that you call it, the absolute, the thing itself? What does it mean? And they had no idea. And they've been involved in religious science for about 40 years. So the question is, do I know? If I'm attempting to step into this realization, does it not behoove me to know what the realization... Okay, what does it look like? Okay, that's what it looks like. Oh, I don't know if I'm tall enough to fit into this. But okay, and then step into it. Otherwise, we are like the emperor walking around in new clothes, too afraid to tell the truth that, look, I asked for the suit of clothes that said only those who are extremely enlightened would be able to recognize and identify. And the foolish would not be able to see the clothes. I can't tell people that I don't see the clothes. I'm the king. I'm the emperor. If they know that I don't see the clothes, then what does that mean? But we are stepping into a time of universal consciousness, expanding consciousness. When you turn on the news, open a newspaper, go on the internet, and we see any number of things. Say again?
Alternate clothes.
Yes! I like the way you phrase that. Yes. Alternate clothes. There are so many things calling, begging for us to prey on. And what we do is we get overwhelmed. It's like, but blah, 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 what do I, and then what we tend to do from there is turn that into anger. And then from there we turn it into finger pointing. Well, it's their fault, his fault, her fault, somebody's fault. But if we come back and we're going to say, there's only one, then that means that one applies to all. And the challenging part is identifying if it applies to all, then it applies to that being which I may want to refer to as my enemy. It refers to that being that I may want to refer to as being bad. So what I have to get to the place in my consciousness is recognizing that their essence is the exact same essence as mine. So on that level, they can only be good. And when we say good, we're not saying good in the same way we say, so did you see the new Power Rangers movie? Was it good? Was it any good? So was it any good? That's him. That was him. I saw the look. He gave you a look. How dare you? But the thing is, it's a different kind of good. When we say God is all there is and God is good, it's not that paradoxical. The good that we are referring to is we are saying that God, the absolute, the thing itself, is life-affirming. It is ever creating and expanding. It is love. Love cannot be, you know how we say, love doesn't hurt. Because it doesn't. If it does, it's not love. You don't say, you know what? I love you. Who says that as an insult? Who says, oh, I love you? Like, and FYI, that's American Sign Language for I love you. Who does that? No one. Because we know that love is good. To the point where it's not just good, but love is goodness expressing. So, God is good. God is love. God is love expressing. God is love in expression. So when this persons are not behaving in this way, they're simply, how did we start? To be or not to be is not the question. They are choosing because they can't choose not to be divine, but they can choose to ignore it. And when we ignore what we are being, then we are going to behave based upon that other set of alternate clothing. There's this story I recently read. I'm in so many different minister groups, blogs, things, stuff, that sometimes I'll start reading something and say, wow, oh man, I was reading this and thinking it was Christian. I'm like, why are they mentioning Buddhist so many times? And it's one of the Buddhist minister groups. Like there's so many. And there was this one where this new minister was coming to this church, and he set up this little experiment where he put on the dirtiest, rattiest, funkiest clothes he could possibly put on. And the only people who knew were the board members. And he came into the church, and people darted their eyes. He walked over to the table, and someone made a plate and gave it to him and pushed him away somewhere. He sat near the front, and the ushers moved him to the back. And then one of the trustees got up and spoke and blah, 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 and said, and now I would like to introduce our new minister. And everybody's looking around like, what, the new minister's here? And the homeless bum stood up and started walking to the front. And people, why did he get up? What is he, deaf? Did he not hear? What, are you stupid? Why is he? And he walks all the way up and walks up to the pulpit and says, I'm your new minister. And then shame set in. I didn't know. So you treated me based upon the clothing that I had. You treated me based upon what you thought. And the place in the Bible that he immediately went to was a passage that said, when I was hungry and you did not feed me, when I was naked and you did not clothe me, when I was homeless and you did not shelter me. And everybody said, but Lord, if we had known it were you, when did we do this to you? When you've done it to anyone else, you've done it to me. So that comes down to the absolute. If I know in my being that there is only one, and I hurt her, then I've hurt me, and I've hurt him. And he doesn't have to be in the room. But by me blurting curses and putting the energy of that out. There's a song, gospel song, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. In the beginning, God separated the waters. Space. And what sets into vibration, into space, moves. Wade in the water, because when God troubles the water, sets the water into vibration, the waves will move and touch you, and you will be healed. What I set forth into the waves, into the water, in my consciousness, has no choice but to travel the waters, the ethers, the space that we assume separates us because we don't see what's here. But we already know there is no space, meaning absence. Because the only reason you can hear me is because these things in my throat called vocal cords vibrate. And when they vibrate, it causes the air to vibrate. And as the air vibrates, it goes into your ear canal and hits your eardrum, which causes it to vibrate. And then the nerves on the other side translate that vibration in your brain as, that's Reverend Ray talking. What I say matters. Not just that it matters, but that it changes matter. That's why it matters. So what I say about one, I'm saying about all. If I call any one stupid, then I've called all of us. Because there's only one. If I call any one useless, pointless, waste of life, anything, then I've said we all are. It is. But flip that. Every time I speak a blessing and know and affirm and acknowledge the amazing, beautiful person that you are, I'm knowing that for all of us as well. Every time I speak and know that this planet is a planet encased, enveloped in, surrounded by, infused with love, joy, peace, and beauty, and that is all, then that truth becomes as well. So when we know that we are being it, then everything that then comes forth as our doing identifies what you are being. Because when you are that master ballerina, the master musicians, the master parent, the master practitioner, which we all are, it has no choice but to show up in our lives. Because we can't not be love made flesh. We cannot not be magnificence given human form. So once again, the invitation is, now that I know how great I truly am, now that I know how powerful I truly am, what am I going to take on as mine to do? How do I step forward and shift the consciousness in my mind, knowing there's only one mind? In my home, knowing that what happens in my home is going to change the street. In my neighborhood, knowing that what happens in my neighborhood is going to change the city. In my city, knowing it'll change the state. In my state, knowing it'll change the country. In my country, knowing it'll change the world. Because the moment I wrap this thumb off and cut off the circulation, the energy, the movement of, what happens to it? It dies, it falls off. But not only that, it's not like the thumb just goes, boop, I'm gone. It affects the, I'm sorry, Ann. Thumpkin's gone. I'm supposed to be serious. We're in a serious ministerial moment here. Once it falls off, it has no choice but to affect the rest of the organism. It's not like it just falls off and goes about its business. The rest of this is also affected. Nothing happens in isolation when there's only one. Let's treat. Grounding ourselves and allowing ourselves to be breathed by that which we know is the I am. Knowing that in this breath, all that God is, all that the absolute is who and what I am. And as I know that the absolute is right here present in full expression around me, with me, moving through me, within me, and showing up as me, I know this truth is true for each and every one in this room as well. All that God is present right now, in every thought, in every word, and in every deed. Knowing that I have the ability to think a thing that is not as though it were and make it so. So I think thoughts of peace and make it so. I think thoughts of love and make it so. I speak words of joy and beauty and make it so. I treat and move my feet and make it so. Knowing that the infinite, absolute, one is showing up right here, right now as me for a reason. So I willingly and consciously step forward into this beingness, knowing that I am called to be great, to be good, life-affirming, to be ever expanding in consciousness, to be all that I possibly can be, and so much more. And knowing this is the invitation not just for myself, but for each and every one in this room as well, to be all that magnificence calls us to be all that beauty calls us to be, harmony calls us to be, the absolute in human form. So it is in gratitude that I speak these words, knowing that they are not the words of Raymont, but they are the words of the absolute, speaking about itself, through itself, planting these words back into the mind of itself. And because it is God speaking through, about, and back unto itself, these words are already done. They are already complete. And together we say, and so it is.